Hey YouTube, gonna do a gas tank and rusted lines on a 2000 hatch. Most everything came from Rockauto, and I'll put everything in the description. So I started off with some 5/16 fuel injection hose. It's called the Barricade fuel injection hose from Gates. Use that for the feed, and then the return I used the return and the evap. I just used 1/4 inch line. So underneath here, you will see some of the awesome results of 20 years of Wisconsin winters. Lots of salt going down. Lots of rust there. Took out as much as I could, treated it, and then I'll try and tack weld in some metal here. It's very, very thin, so we burned through a bunch of the holes trying to do so, even on the lowest settings. You'll see some new brake lines here. These were done last year. Everything sits in this tray here. That's that big Evap line if you have a 99 or 2000. So everything sits in this tray, so I'll remove that, and all of your brake lines and fuel lines just rust in there. So there's a little bit of the rust underneath on the subframe. Treated it once again, and we'll go from there. So to get started, take your gas cap off. That will relieve a little bit of the pressure. I just put some paper towel in there just in case. Here you'll want to take out 4 Phillips screws, and then once you do that, you can get this little plate off. This is under your back seat. There should be a 10mm that comes out in between the seat belts, and then you should be able to just kind of pry up from there. Lots of videos show you how to do that. So once you get those 4 screws out with a Phillips head, you can pry it open here, and voila, you'll see underneath that's where some of your connections are. You can get in there, and this is where you'll need to start next. So then right here, you'll see that's your return line and then your main feed line. Getting these connectors off is pretty simple. You got rubber boots. You'll pull those rubber boots up and then press down and kind of push out those connectors. Be careful. This connector here can be pretty stubborn. I used a little screwdriver to pry it off of that metal post. You'll see here, back in there, you can put a little screwdriver in there and pull that off of that post. That'll give you a little bit more room to work with if it's stuck. Once you get that off, you can push down there and try and separate them. So here I'm taking off the return line, classic hose clamp. Just get that little guy off there. And then I just like to be careful here. You will replace this for most of you anyway. So if you do break it, no big deal. If you just want it off for the time being, that's my approach. This is a quick connect. Can be a little tough to get to. You'll want to push down on both sides of that yellow in there. And yeah, you'll see right in there, push those down, and you can slide that off. It can be a little tricky depending on how much rust you got going on in there. For me, I was replacing both of these, so I was able to get them off, but if you break them, not the end of the world. They're pretty cheap, and I'll put those parts in the description as well. That all just needs to come off, and you'll want to have clean kind of pipe on both of those. I put some just paper towels in. Next, I believe this is a 17mm socket, trying to get the rest of the gas tank to drain. You'll want to obviously drive it as low as possible, and I'm getting ready for a big mess to come out, and nothing. Got it pretty low, but nothing there. So moving then, I got the tire off here, looking just behind the left wheel, lots of these little plastic pieces. Hold on some of these plastic cowls. That's kind of the gas tank right there where it's rusting. So my approach here, you can pry at them all you want. I just did a little drill right through these plastic pieces. They don't come out super easy. Once you get the cowl off, you'll see your main filler neck tube, I guess, and then here's the awesome rust. Going up there, that's the Evap line. Remember, for the 99 and 2000, it's a big 5/8 inch hose. I probably would go with a 5/8 inch hose if I had to do this again. You'll see I step down to 1/4 inch just because I had a 25-foot roll. But next here, I'm trying to take out these straps. There's just 2 straps, one on each side. Those are a little hook bracket there that will kind of just hook into your gas tank. You can imagine after 20 years, those did not move. Be very careful under the other side with the bolts there. I snapped them. So here's underneath the lines, just rusty. I can put my finger right through them. That big one there is your Evap line. If you're not 99 or 2000, you won't have that problem. I just cut a lot of this plastic out. I was not going to use it. Didn't want to deal with the bolts, so I just used a bunch of different tools to cut that plastic out of there. Little sidebar, I use this auto body sealant from 3M after I put in some new metal. Like I said, it was really hard to tack in these new sheet metal pieces. It just kept burning, it's paper thin. So anyways, I covered up that. Next, on the front of your engine here, you want to get your intake off here. 4 clips in the back. Probably all done this before. Get that off there, set it aside. Next, under your fuel filter, that's the big evap hose that goes into the evap canister for 99 2000. Once again, that's a big 5/8 inch. If you're years younger than that, won't have an issue. It's a 14-inch. I used a brake line wrench that helped, and then I think it was like a 17 or a 19 on top. Broke that free. So then over here, this is your return. Comes off of just underneath the injectors here, going down into the right side of your engine bay. If you're looking at the front of your car, sorry for the camera work. Get that off of there. Next, I got my gas tank. This is once again Rockauto. I'll put that in there. I think maybe 200 bucks or so. I'm just gonna spray this all down, get it ready while other things are soaking with PB Blaster. New gas tank straps, sprayed those down as well. Some rubberized undercoating. And right there you can see that's where the plastic tray and the lines used to be. I just kept cutting those rusty lines. I didn't want to deal with those bolts for those things, and I would reuse those actually. So there's the ends of the lines. Just keep cutting as much as you can up under there. They get really tough to cut if they're not rusty. Here's where I cut the gas tank straps, leftover fuel, even though nothing drained out right away. Tipped it on its side when I got it out, and tons came out. So I'm just soaking that in this pan, trying to get those things to clean up, loosen up. Here, this is on top of the gas tank. You got to take these parts off. Don't even know what they're all called. I think this was a 10 millimeter. Lots of rust, so just kind of pounded those on to get those off. You can see here they've cleaned up a little bit from sitting in the gas. Not great though. Really hoping to get better results. So then back to the front, you can see I've cut out as much as I could. There's different little straps in there. This big evap hose, I could not cut that, so I'm just going turn by turn, tightening down with a little pipe cutter there. Crank it down tight, rotate, tighten, rotate. Not fun. To get those straps out in the back, be very, very careful. This is where I got this one out on the left. That was great news. Torch would have been nice, but you're kind of by gas there. Right side, I wasn't so lucky. I snapped it. So now I cut it off and fished it out with a magnet. Now I'm creating a bolt leader. So I'm using some JB Weld, just trying to get creative. Put a bunch of that in the hole. I wrapped some thin metal line around a bolt that I would use. And I think it's a 5/16, kind of any little bolt that mimicked the other one. I'll put a leader down through that, and then you can see I pulled it through there. I use the tape so you don't get the JB Weld on the threads. Just put some extra weight on there, let it hang, let that dry for an hour or so while I do other crap. This will hold my strap on. Luckily, eventually, bolt leader is great. Here's your quick connects. I only end up using one of these, but that's the part number. I used that same kind of head. I did buy this one based on what I saw in different reviews. I don't quite trust it. Other people said they were having problems with it sealing. So I just cut that fuel filter line, the main feed line up in there, and sorry for the camera work here, but I reused that old nut. I didn't want to chance it with a new one, so I just used the little barbed feed that I'll put into that 5/16 main line, and then use that feed. Here's where I go from that 5/8 big evap line down to a 1/4 inch. So I had to go to the brass, like plumbing section area, use some of the original 5/8 inch evap hose, put all this crap together, use some plumbing tape and stuff, seal it all up. Like I said, I would just spend the extra money on the 5/8 inch hose, run the original evap line. Obviously putting on this tape, you want to put it on so when you start to thread it, it doesn't come loose. And then I just use some, pliers and some wrenches, really crank that down tight. So that'll get me my 5/8 inch down to 1/4 inch. Here, and you'll see what I did. That's the 5/8 inch evap line. This is a heavy sucker. It gets really tight up under there. Trying to feed that through just to get down to a 1/4 inch. Same thing up here from the evap canister, 5/8 inch. Made this concoction down to a 1/4 inch. I would just go the 5/8 inch hose. It's another $20 for 12 feet, something like that. But if you want to get creative like I did, just spend a lot of time here going to the parts store at plumbing sections. That will slide up onto that evap canister. You'll be good to go. So I did run the new lines back down through where the old ones were, and then I just undercoated everything. I used those same kind of straps that were in there already. Remember, your evap line will come off the side here, and then up into here is your main feed line, and then your return line. So the feed line's got that green on there. That's that Barricade 5/16. Getting on to making these, because of course they wouldn't come apart, so I have to make my own bolts. I use some 5/16. I think I used 3-inch. I would definitely go 4-inch just to be safe. I torched it a little bit, put the nuts on there to protect it, torched it real quick, and then just bent it back some to try and get it as close as I could. You'll see here, did pretty well. I would get longer. Go for the 4-inch. Just give yourself some extra. You'll see why when I get to the straps. Wasn't impossible to recreate. Much cheaper than paying for wherever you even get those from. This is that evap line again. I had to cut it right here. There's a little plastic piece that comes off of that. I would not recommend doing that. Just buy the 5/8 inch hose and then get a little adapter. But I cut it. Here I am. All just so I could save a little bit of money and use the rest of that 1/4 inch return. This was tough to get off the old gas tank. Be very, very careful. Don't know what any of this stuff is. I just know it had to go with it, so I was able to get that off. I put this on here. That did snap, but I ended up having to take that off. You see I zip tied some other pieces in here. Just a lot of stuff rusted and had broken off. That was just all just garbage. I was able to salvage it though, luckily, so that was nice. Just more that will go back up and under the seat, and that will connect again. I put a bunch of anti-seize around all of these. The hardware came with new gaskets and new bolts. I reused some of those patches too for vibration purposes. So we're getting pretty close here to lower the car down and get it back on. You'll see some shiny parts in there that I held the lines in with. I put those in every so often and then zip tied them together. So those are actually screwed into the car and then zip tied together. Those are just all holding the lines. Not using that tray anymore. Don't want any more salt. Hopefully nothing punctures those lines, but I'm not too worried about it. I don't off-road a whole lot. That's where the old brake line came down through the engine bay, but they came out pretty clean, laid in there pretty nice. They are protected for the most part up in that channel. So I used just a jack and a little flat piece of metal, set the tank on there, lower the car down, got my straps ready over there. So this is where it took some finagling, took a lot of finesse to get in there, but you see how I barely had enough. That one I got plenty of room. These are both 3-inch bolts. That one was fine. This one on the left side here, this did hold, so it worked. That bolt leader, dropping that through the top, letting that JB weld set, and I used some locking washers. This is the original one. I think it's a 14 goes in there, and that held. Up in here, you can see that's where the evap line comes out. There's that big beast of a connector I put in there. It's just really tight, so that gets it down to a 1/4 inch. Remember, if you don't have the 99 or 2000, won't be a problem. So this is where your filler neck. I put this on too far onto the gas tank. Try not to do that. It left me just a little bit short when I connected it up. It's okay, but don't forget you got little T connectors down there. You got your evap lines, your return lines. All these have little clamps coming down, and there's 3 of them dropping down from the filler neck. And you can see back up in there. Through your evap goes, all that'll run back up into your back seat there. I just put some rubber in there for protecting. You see, so when I lined it up here, it's not quite as long, doesn't quite go all the way out to that edge like it used to. So it's about a 12-inch section of hose. I put it too far onto the gas tank, but I'm too far along now to take it back off. So I checked it for leaks. There was still enough pipe on there. Wasn't too worried about it. This is back up inside now. I got your return line here. I just put the old clamp on and a zip tie just for fun. That's where your return is. That's the new quick connect. And I used special fuel injection hose clamps to get that fuel line back in there. That went on nicely. Now I'm ready for some of the plugs. Those all went back on. Underneath here, remember I used that old nut and I slid that on. I plugged it in here to the 5/16 hose. And I'm using two fuel injection hose connectors just for fun. So you can see that slides right on over that. It was a little loose, made me a little nervous. But I used a 5/16 barb connector with that original bolt. I put two on, like I said, just for fun, and had no leaks. So hit me up with any questions and good luck.